Shannon was consumed by her health anxiety and fear of panic attacks almost every waking moment of her day. Her health anxiety seemed to shift around her body. At one moment, she would focus on her heart and notice skipped beats, while other times she would worry about certain moles or ringing in her ears, digestion problems, or a rash on her arms. Shannon developed habits of compulsively checking on whatever the symptom was that caught her attention in that moment. She described herself as being in a chronic state of worry, doing what she could to avoid panic or anything that would make her symptoms worse. Now, Shannon's health anxiety and panic disorder had convinced her that something was very wrong with her that required constant attention and hypervigilance just to survive. Now, today I'm going to talk about how health anxiety and panic disorder can trick you into not only believing that something is dangerously wrong, but how anxiety itself can become associated with certain bodily sensations based on how you respond to them. I want you to think for a moment about what you do when you hear a noise outside at night. Let's say it's a noise that scares you. What do? Well, first, you get very quiet, right? You stop doing everything and you listen. And you focus 100% of your attention on listening for any signs of a threat or danger. We're wired for survival, and when we sense something that we interpret as threatening, our senses intensify, and we become acutely aware of everything in the vicinity of that possible threat. Now, if there is any experience of fear or concern, your fight or flight or freeze response will likely to be triggered as well. And then you would experience the whole host of bodily sensations that are associated with your fight or flight response. This is exactly what happens to people with health anxiety and panic disorder. They score high in a trait called anxiety sensitivity. Anxiety sensitivity is the tendency to focus on and misinterpret normal anxiety symptoms in the body as being harmful or dangerous. And then they develop an acute hyper-awareness of those sensations. It might be sensations like heart movements, breathing changes, dizziness, ringing in the ears, throat and neck sensations, eyesight changes, muscle tightness, nausea, reality sensing, those types of things. Now let's go back to that noise that you heard outside at night. Let's say that you thought, oh, it's probably just the cat, jumping on the garbage bins again. And you go back to what you're doing. Your anxiety would just die down naturally. But if your interpretation is something negative, like, oh my gosh, that might be somebody trying to break in, I'd better call the police, your anxiety is going to go sky high. Now, we're wired to survive, and we're also wired to think the worst case scenarios because that helps us survive. We're wired to overreact, and people with health anxiety and panic disorder and that have anxiety sensitivity are wired to overreact to these bodily sensations. But this tendency to misinterpret bodily sensations as something dangerous really backfires on people with anxiety, health anxiety and panic disorder. So take, for example, when Shannon noticed a skipped heartbeat or a palpitation. She's highly reactive to them. So even though she was tested and told that she has a healthy heart and what she feels is not dangerous, it still activates her anxiety. It goes up and she worries that this time it might be life-threatening. And her negative thoughts and misinterpretations reinforce her anxiety, and it triggers her fight or flight response. Then she becomes even more focused on her heart, and as she's more hypervigilant, and that fight or flight response exacerbates those very symptoms that she fears by increasing her heart rate, creating more palpitations. And to calm herself, she begins to monitor her heart rate, and she, maybe has a drink of water, maybe she cancels her plans for the day, calls her parents to come over because she doesn't want to be alone. So Shannon unintentionally reinforced her heart and health anxiety and panic through her misinterpretation that her bodily sensations were dangerous. And then through her behaviors, she tried to calm herself and keep herself safe. So listen carefully to this next sentence. Through your thoughts and your behaviors, you can train your brain to become more sensitive and hypervigilant to anxiety symptoms in your body. And your brain can learn to associate and then activate your fear response when it notices those same bodily sensations. Shannon's brain has now learned to associate increases in heart rate and normal heart movements with her anxiety or her fear response. This is called Hebbs Law. It's named after Dr. Donald Hebb, a neuropsychologist. Now, Donald Hebb explained how neurons that fire together wire together and become associated. And this is a simple explanation of a complex brain process. But in Shannon's case, she trained her brain through her negative thoughts and her behaviors to associate changes in her heart rate and normal heart movements, along with other bodily sensations, with her anxiety or her fear response. They're wired together. And that means that those conditions are now associated and they are experienced together. So Shannon also has prevented herself from learning that she's perfectly safe without the worry and without doing anything to keep herself safe. Health anxiety, panic, and anxiety in general trick you into believing that something is wrong and something is life-threatening. And there's always this immediacy to it. The fear convinces you to behave and to think in ways that reinforce that fear cycle. And you reinforce the fear cycle by having fearful thoughts, trying to calm yourself, and do anything you can to keep yourself safe. And then you create more hypervigilance, more awareness, more sensitivity to what you're experiencing internally. Over time, your fear response and the very symptoms that scare you get wired or associated in the brain. And now when you experience one, you automatically experience the other. If you're afraid of heart changes, heart movements, breathing changes, the brain can even trigger a panic attack when it notices these small, normal changes when you're fast asleep. Those are called nocturnal panic attacks. That's how powerful these associations can become. But it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to live like that. These conditions are treatable. There are techniques to reverse this process and retrain your brain to not associate those bodily sensations with your fear response. Go to my site, pagepradco.com, and I have loads of free resources to help you, along with specialized courses for deeper levels of help for health anxiety and for panic disorder. Stop letting anxiety trick you. Health anxiety and panic disorder trick you into doing the exact opposite of what you need to do to get better. I know it can feel overwhelming to face these things on your own. You're not defective. You're not too weak to recover. These conditions are very treatable as long as you know what to do. So please reach out to me at pagepradco.com if I can be of any help to you. Do not let health anxiety or panic disorder trick you into retreating into self-protection or try to escape these symptoms or avoid the symptoms. Learn how to face your fears, rewire your brain, build up your tolerance for how anxiety feels in your body. Until next time, I'll see you in session. Take care. Bye-bye.